What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel for Webflow Pros. For today's video, I'm going to show how both a beginner and a pro would build certain Webflow interactions. If you have any questions about Webflow, be sure to follow me on Instagram as I'm doing regular FAQ sessions there. So let's dive right into the tutorial. The first thing I'm going to do is show how I've seen beginners build out these type of interactions, and we'll talk about some of the pain points with this. So the first thing we'll do is maybe set up a hover state on a card. Maybe call this card hover in, and then before this interaction is even done, creating a brand new interaction and calling this one card hover out, and then diving back into the hover in and setting some of these initial states. So maybe we select this top part and we set its size. Maybe it starts off at maybe a height of like 80 pixels or so, and then the size would increase to maybe a height of 110 pixels. And then the inside of the card, or even the card as a whole, because it has overflow hidden, we'd basically set a height on this card right here to basically hide that entire button, making sure none of it is peeking in. And what you'll already see a problem here is on different screen sizes when this text wraps to new lines, or if the client ever adds more text here, it could sort of break this whole layout if we're relying on an exact pixel height for these cards. So then maybe we go ahead and increase the size to 120 pixels or so, making sure that we're seeing all of that card. And then the next step would be basically hiding this paragraph text. We just go over to opacity, turn that down, and then it's basically going to fade up, which means that we'll want to move this header down a couple pixels to basically center it up. So we'll use move right here and basically just drag it down some. And again, I mean, this works fine until like another line of text is added to one of these headings, and then it's not going to be perfectly centered anymore. So we're kind of like hard setting values here, and it could cause some issues later on. Let's also move it back to 0 pixels here. And then let's set some sort of easing, and let's try some different timings and see what this could look like. This needs to all be initial states, so then this would be checked as initial, and it would go from that state to that state. Maybe we increase the speed back to 0.5, half a second, okay, and that's basically our hover out, so that state right there. And then what I've seen happen a lot is just going in here and rebuilding the entire thing. Again, that's not as efficient as basically just duplicating this and then making this our new out state right here. And then this way it's as simple as just deleting all the old ones, keeping our initial states, unchecking that, keeping the same duration, adding our same easing, and then we have all this set for us. So now whenever the page loads, it starts like this and it spans out to that. So again, that's a lot smoother. And then what I've seen a lot of people do is come back over here and then just recreate that. So hover out and then just apply this to each element one by one, the hover in and the hover out. Again, it'll get you there, but it takes more time for sure to basically set it up this way. All right, so the next thing we're gonna go over is sort of this looping icon. So maybe on page load, this would be somewhat of a loop. Starts on page load, and we'd call this looping icons. And each one of these icons could be moving a little bit. Some could be moving the same speed or duration. So it would go a lot like this. Again, not really selecting a class, leaving it on selected element. What that's going to do is later on, when we have to duplicate this whole module for another page, it's going to duplicate the entire interaction because we didn't apply this to a class. But let's just say 0, 0. So that's where it's going to start. And then we're going to kind of move it over -10 by -10, so that's just pushing it over a little bit, and then we'll move this one +10 to +10, and then maybe we'll move it back to 0 and 0, and then we'll leave this with 0 duration. Let's just see how that loops. So it's basically just moving back and forth like that, one loop. And then what I've seen happen a lot is basically just, you know, duplicating each one of these one by one, and then pairing it up with this one and saying change target, and selecting the next icon and doing this all the way through. You're probably noticing a theme by now. It's a lot of very repetitive work. A lot of this is very repetitive, and then just making this go 10 and 10. That way it's not moving the same direction, and then this one will be -10 and -10, and when we play that, now they're kind of doing opposite movements there. And then just going through each one of these icons one by one and repeating that process. So this is kind of how like a beginner would handle some of these things. There's one more that I want to cover, and it's basically anytime we scroll into view, maybe changing the section in the background colors. So it would basically be a while scroll into view interaction. We would start up an animation, and this would be, we'll call it dark mode. It's basically going to change the whole page. So we'd grab the body and we'd basically change its background color from this grayish color here to the dark gray color right there. And then we would also change the text color of it from this black, which again, there's no way to get around this part. This is kind of the part that has to be done, to the gray. So we're basically just inverting it right there. And then, I mean, having to go to each one of these one by one, you know, so each heading going from dark on this one, so text color of black, to a text color of this gray. And doing that for basically every box, every element, everything, because, and if we preview this, maybe we can adjust the rate at which it transitions. All right, let's see what this looks like. And we preview and scroll, okay, and it goes dark right at that 48 mark. But basically having to go to each one of these, because their text color is applied per class or per element. It's not all inheriting from the body. And even with some of these sections, we're not really thinking of ways like we'll have to change every white card one by one or every white line one by one to black, because we're not really thinking of ways that we can streamline some of this. So a general rule that we kind of follow or talk about when we're coding a site is basically keep it dry, which dry stands for don't repeat yourself. And we want to follow the same thing whenever we're talking about Webflow interactions, because we don't want to have basically a bloated site with tons of code. And we definitely don't want to take a long time to develop things. We want to keep things fast and streamlined, and we want to make sure it works across breakpoints. So a lot of the battle that we're going to face with developing really great interactions starts with the way that it was set up or built. A lot of that battle happens before you actually start working on the interaction. And that's why it's so important to know what interactions you want to build in your design phase before you even come into Webflow, having those planned out, because it greatly affects the way you build things. So like this, for instance, instead of having to manually move this heading down a couple pixels, I could have this paragraph wrapped in something that has overflow hidden. And that way, when I decrease the height of this container, what I'm going to notice is that heading is going to manually basically center up inside this. The reason for that being, if we look at my whole section, is that this basically has flexbox centered. So I can basically collapse the height of this, and this heading will remain centered inside the container. Has a little bit of padding. We could play around with maybe min heights if we wanted to, but that's the general gist of that. Same thing with this button. If we have it set with a height of auto, and we go from a height of auto to a height of 0 pixels, that's automatically collapsing the height of the card. Now it doesn't matter if we even come in here and we decide, okay, I want to add a couple more lines to this card. It's not going to break the core functionality of the card, because we built this in a scalable way where all the height, you know, is basically being set from the content blocks, which is really how it should be. And then we're not having to force a height on the overall card itself either. So I'll basically take you through quickly the basic setup of how we would handle this, tackling it in a professional way. This time apply it to the class, so that way we're not having to add it one by one to each one of these elements, and then create sort of our hover in effect. And basically from there, it gets a little bit easier, because we're basically just going to go here, set the size, and then our initial state is going to have a height of 0 pixels, just like that. and then we're going to change that size to a height of auto. So if this button copy ever wrapped onto a new line, doesn't matter how high this button is, if we ever decide to change the style of it, we're not manually fixing a pixel height here, and that's really the most important thing. We would kind of do the same thing with the paragraph. If we want to add opacity to this, we definitely can, but it's important that the size is actually going to start at a height of 0, just like this, and then we want to increase that size right here to a height of auto, just like that. So it basically just, everything is growing just the way we want there. Okay, and then that's basically gonna grow it out. Actually, I want to reverse that. So height, and you get how easy it is to change these because these properties aren't affecting each other anymore. I'm not having to readjust, you know, the height of the whole card anytime I change the height of an element inside it. And then from there, what I can do is just set some sort of easing, and then speed is fine, just like that. Let it sort of grow, just like that. Awesome. And then again, same thing, we want to just duplicate this whole thing. And again, that's just so much more, it's so much cleaner the way this is being built and the way these are growing. It looks like sort of these cards, this hover in here, is it this top part? The top part, we need to make sure it's only affecting siblings with this, or children actually, with this class, because our trigger is the entire card, and now those pieces shouldn't be growing. Okay, yeah, now it kind of works just like that. Awesome. So we have a really smooth interaction there, and it's a lot cleaner. What I would do for these icons is basically create a couple global classes. So I have some in here that I made. Basically, this is called loop 1. I'll have another one that's called loop 2. And then I'll have another one that's called loop 3. So each one of these loops can be moving different directions. They don't all have to be moving the same direction. And I'm just going to apply those global combo classes, or those global classes as combo classes, to each one of these elements. So this one has loop 2, this one has loop 3, 1, 2, 3. It just keeps repeating. So then when I create my loop or my animation, I'm going to move each one of these global classes, and then every one of these elements that have this class applied is going to move in that direction. So I'm not having to recreate the animation for every one of these icons. So if I go ahead and create my page, sort of page load animation, and I can create one called looping icons. And this time we're actually going to set this one with loop 1, and we're going to set it to move, and we'll apply it to the class this time. That way it's going to work on every page we decide to add this to. I'm going to use EMs this time, so it's a bit more scalable. 0 EM, 0 EM, and then we'll move it over maybe -1 EM and -1 EM. And then for this one, we'll move it +1 EM and +1 EM. And then we'll move it back to 0 and 0 EM right here, and 0 EM right here. And then we'll set this initial state to duration of 0. And then watch what happens. It's moving everything with that loop 1 class applied, just like that. And then when I come over here to my loop 2 and I decide to do the same thing, maybe I move this one 0. And let's make sure that this one here has a duration of 0 as well. Now we preview that, and I mean, a little bit more slow, nothing too drastic. I may even decrease this to like 0.5 EM so it's not moving quite so far. But we're creating a really unique effect without having to apply it to every single element. So we're speeding up our build time. We're also making our code cleaner, which is what we want. Okay, so this next part is basically the light mode to dark modes. And the way that I have this set up, if you click on each one of these elements, these in the card are inheriting from this card block because we don't want the color to change. But like this right here, if we click on it, it's all inheriting from the body. So if I were to change maybe the color of the body here, and we change its background color to this dark gray, and we change its text color to this light gray, you'll see most of my text is already doing that. Now, exceptions. This text right here is in a link, and we have to hard set a link color on the all links tag, otherwise it's blue. So we had to have something there. What I did was create a sort of global class that I can apply to any link called isLink. So if I go ahead and target this isLink class right here and change its font color right here to maybe this silver, what you're going to notice is every link on the site is automatically changed to this silver color. Even my logo in here, because it's using this variable of current capital C for color right there, this Webflow variable, which is making it inherit from its direct parent the color, that SVG. So that's all working there. This button right here, it's going to use this class of isDark. So any element that's black initially that I want to change to white is going to have this class of isDark. So if I target this class isDark and then I basically change its background color to white, right here, yes, to white, you'll notice this line and this line changed because they're both inherited from that background color, those two lines. Also, this one right here changed, and I can also change the text color inside of this isDark combo class to black, and now all those are changing. And then I'm gonna kind of do the same thing here. So I have this white card, and I also have this white line that need to be changed to black on the opposite mode. So I can target this is light, and then I can basically just change the background color of that is light class to black, and now this and the line color changed. So instead of having to go ahead and grab every single link one by one, go ahead and grab every single white background color object one by one to do this change, I'm going to be able to use these classes. You know, this is light, we'll also use this is dark, and then we'll use this other class of is link, and we'll basically just use those classes right here to create our Webflow interaction just the way we want it. And the main thing that we're going to switch is the body. So I'll go ahead and create a class of main body on this one. And let's just go ahead and create our scroll into view interaction. So again, it's going to be applied to this whole section here. We're going to create a while scroll into view interaction. The reason why I'm not applying this one to the class is I don't want it to apply to every section. Could add a combo class to this section, but mainly this is the only one I want it on. We're going to create our scroll into view interaction. We're going to apply this to the, we'll just call it footer scroll is what we'll call it. And the main thing we want to do here is go ahead and grab the main body class that we created. And we'll create a while scroll that's going to change the background color first off from its initial state, which is light gray, to its other state, which is dark gray. And we're going to change the text color from this black, and it's going to change the text color here to this light gray. All right, that's automatically fixing a lot of things. Then we're going to change the link color, text color again from black, and we're going to change text color on the links to light gray. Awesome, all these links changed, you saw that. And then we need to basically do the same thing for our is dark. And let's go ahead and set this, I'll set the keyframe to 45 this time. And I'll set this keyframe to, let's do 25. And let's just see where those fall. If we were to preview this change, yes, we have a nice smooth change across our entire page for all of our links, for all of our sections. And it appears to be working. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that made a lot of sense of how you can basically clean up your interactions and build them in a way that's scalable and fast. I'd like to say a quick thank you to all of my Patreons. Thank you so much for making this channel possible. We're actually about to reach our goal. We're really close to 100 Patreons, and we'll be doing our next live hangout when we reach that goal. So thank you so much. I'll catch you in the next video. Goodbye.